I love the blocking actors and then turning the cameras on, shooting the scene, and it's done in 45 minutes, or 30 minutes, or 15 minutes. So there's no time for angst, there's no time to try too many different things. You really have to make a judgment call, say this is how it's going, give the right notes, and nail it. There's no room for error. Although, of course, I made plenty of errors. But you really just have to be totally focused and totally at one with the cast that you're working with and know exactly what they need to do and be available to them. So it was that idea of creating something from nothing, from a bunch of people standing around a set, passing on some instructions. Before you know it, there's a scene that's moving us in some way. My first conversation with Rob Tappert was, he asked me, did I know much about CG work? I didn't really know what CG meant, but I said yes, I'd done some, not really knowing what exactly he meant. And we got to talk about Ray Harryhausen movies. The Voyage of Sinbad and Jason and the Argonauts and the fight with the skeletons, and suddenly we were talking like a couple of geeks who loved fantasy, and that was enough for him. I didn't really have much of a show reel that would impress an American producer, but he could see that I could love the material and was good with actors. Hercules was, by the time I got there, a very big, successful show and had already established itself its own way of working. So the crew worked a certain way, the DP worked a certain way, the lead character worked a certain way. They weren't looking for someone to come in and reinvent or change the way they did it. And occasionally, yes, I had the odd conflict with cast, where Hercules, the young Kevin Sorbo, would come up and say, I don't think that character would do that, I think I should do that, because the show's called Hercules. And I couldn't really argue with that as a relative newbie. The idea was New Zealand's worst family, kind of like The Simpsons. The Savages were, I guess, a group of people, a group of avatars for characters that I met in real life, growing up in the Midwest of Auckland. But I wanted them to be also the smartest characters on the block. So they weren't stupid like The Simpsons, like Homer. They were actually quite cunning. And you were never really sure what jobs they did. They seemed to survive on their wits. It rained so badly on that shoot. We went to a motor camp to shoot for a week, and it just poured down with rain. It flooded. Roads were washed out, and I had scenes on the beach and bonfires at night on the beach up at Pakiri, but none of it was possible because of the rain. So rather than throw my toys out of the cot, I guess, I just figured, well, I've still got a story to tell, I just can't tell it with those pictures, and I'll just adapt. And you know, people who watch that film and they look at the sprinklers in the background, basically the art department had sprinkled fresh grass clippings over all the mud in that caravan park, and of course put on a sprinkler as if we needed more water to suggest it's still summer. Sometimes I'm asked by fans of the movie, you know, did Outrageous Fortune rip off Savage Honeymoon? Which my lawyers tell me, no. I don't think the creators of Outrageous Fortune ever watched Savage Honeymoon, certainly not while they were creating the show. They knew it was out there. I do take credit for inventing the West Auckland comedy drama as a genre. because I think Savage Honeymoon does share some elements with Outrageous Fortune, but I don't think there's a direct creative link. What it did do, though, is it told the people at SPP that maybe I should be brought in to help them with Outrageous Fortune, because there's a bunch of West Auckland people and I've made a movie about West Auckland, so maybe I'll be helpful. It was very strange, however, directing the Christmas special of Outrageous Fortune at the end of season 2, because so many elements of the Outrageous Christmas special dovetailed with Savage Honeymoon. So I've actually made 2 West Auckland holiday park comedies. I would say I'm the only director to claim title to that. It's a classic now, isn't it? And it proved that the 1 hour drama can rate really well. I think it was lightning in a bottle. I think the planets aligned. The combination of people working on that show, creating the show, the casting, and the people at the network around that show, shepherding the show to air. That was a particular combination of people and personalities. I tell people it was New Zealand's answer to The Sopranos, and they're quite surprised by that. But I think if we'd tried to create a serious crime family drama, people might have had difficulty accepting it. The humour and the fun of that show, the comedy drama genre, which doesn't really exist in the 1 hour format anywhere else, certainly not in America, was a sort of a unique New Zealand way, using humour as a kind of a Trojan horse to get people to trust the drama. And like I said, James Griffin and Rachel Lang coming together to thrash out that series in the early days. I mean, they really did capture lightning in a bottle. And the casting decision, the casting that they did turned out to be superb. I would work with any of those actors again, and have since. I loved that it was not a soap opera. It was not a crime drama. It was not a procedural. It's not a half-hour comedy. It's a full 1 hour drama. It's very funny, and it has this big idea that gods walk among us, and they're Norse gods. And I love that idea of creating a fantasy piece that was still, like Outrageous Fortune, still about a dysfunctional family. It is, as a genre, quite unique, which is why international fans, particularly sci-fi fans, love it, can't wait for it. It's screening in Canada on the same day it screens here. It's got a lot of international goodwill, because American shows, they're not as edgy. They don't have the bad language and the outrageous comments and the sex. Their fantasy shows tend not to have those things. But Almighty Johnson's does. And I would love to see that audience just build, because, like I say, it could easily run to 5 or 6 seasons without it running out of ideas.